All right, when you open those accounts, did you open them up in your name or in the name of your trust? Oh, we were so upset with that bank that when we went to the new one, we just opened it up in our own names. Hi, Jeff Versace, the Plain English Attorney, and welcome to the video. Today, we are going to talk about the importance of an estate checkup. Now, this is something that we recommend to our clients on an annual basis, especially if what they have is a revocable living trust. The reason for this is there are so many small things that can kind of snowball and end up really just blowing the plan apart if you don't take care of things. So, it's not an uncommon occurrence, unfortunately, that clients will come in for a annual review, but it's been 7, 8 years. And what we end up finding, okay, they had listed 3 people as successor trustees, one, then two, then three. One of them passed on, the other one lives in another country now. All right, now they really only have one person in place. What if something happens to them? All of their choices are out the door for who would be handling the financial aspects of their plan. Or, okay, we had this issue with this beneficiary, or this person passed on and the contingent beneficiaries, like especially it's a child. Unfortunately, it happens sometimes the child passed on. This is going down to the grandkids, and oh, wait, this grandchild who was one at the time we did the original plan, they're now 8, and we've realized they're autistic, and maybe there's some special needs provisions that really need to kick in, and then we need to be a little more specific. Look, all of these things snowball, and if you don't catch it in time, it could just blow the whole plan apart. And then, well, what'd you put the plan in place for in the first place? So we're going to talk a little bit about this annual review and exactly what happens. Uh, these are changed circumstances, but what is a lot more common occurrence is people's in their assets and their accounts and the makeup of what they own changes over time.
If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel.
I could tell you one story, and this was more than a decade ago. I'm not going to mention the actual bank name, although I do mention it when my clients do come in. What happened to this bank had this great idea. This was back when people were still using cash a lot more, so they'd go to an ATM, take cash out. The bank decided, even if people didn't take money out of their checking account at an ATM, they were going to institute a $5 a month ATM fee, and that was just take care of it. They wouldn't have to pay per transaction. And all of these people with checking accounts who never used the ATM, they got so ticked off, and they started pulling all of their money out, and they moved it to another bank. And so for a year and even longer, when we're going through this annual review meeting, we're going through, okay, do you still have this account here? Oh, no. Did you hear what they did? Yeah, I heard exactly what they did. Well, we marched down to this other bank and we opened these accounts, and so we got rid of them. All right, when you open those accounts, did you open them up in your name or in the name of your trust? Oh, we were so upset with that bank that when we went to the new one, we just opened it up in our own names. All right. So these assets working in coordination with the trust, it wasn't working in coordination with the trust anymore when they made these changes. It's these annual meetings where we catch them. All right. So what are the big things that we typically review and make sure we're covering so that we have these big issues are addressed in a timely manner? What are the potential changes and things that can come about? Well, first, and this really isn't that common, there are changes to the estate laws that require some kind of update to the documents. It's not that common. In estate planning terms, these quote big changes that affect documents, at least the flexible ones that we use, maybe every 10 years there's something that has to happen. Okay. Occasionally there are things, well, it's not that big of a deal. It isn't really in your particular circumstance, but look, we're going to update it. If there is other changes, we'll just make sure we're incorporating this new stuff. A lot more frequently than that, it's tax changes. But again, the flexible way that we put together the revocable living trust and the other documents, it just kind of incorporates that. It's not usually some massive wholesale changing of how taxation works on estates that require the documents to get updated. Usually it's a raising or potential lowering of limits. The documents typically incorporate that. So it's not often that there's a change in the law or change in taxation where my clients have to worry about updating things. But it's always good to keep an eye on that. The second thing, which is a lot more common, there's changes in circumstances with the trusted people in your life, the way you want your estate allocated and distributed, potentially restricting certain beneficiaries or not. Probably the most common one I've seen, because I've been doing this long enough, when my clients who are parents with young children, they go, "Oh yeah, look, the age limit. I'm sure they'll be fine by by the time they're 25." And then the kids hit the teenage years, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't think they're ever going to be responsible. Let's make it 50." And then they get a little bit older. It's, oh well, now they're out on their own. There's a lot more responsibility there. We can lower it back down. So all of that changes over time when it comes to things like ages of beneficiaries. That can be a sliding scale. In a lot of cases, my clients are simply picking the specific age of 40, meaning the trustee gets the discretion to give it early. And so they're a better judge of it. But yeah, I've seen that age go up and down as the kids get older. So those particular types of changes, really, they're occurring every 5 to 7 years. When I get clients that come in and it's been 10, 15 years, it's everything is out of whack because of the way life's circumstances changed. Oh, well, I had my friend and neighbor as a trustee and we moved and I haven't talked to them in 6 or 7 years. All right, time to make sure that's updated. But as I already mentioned, the most common occurrence is a change to your assets. So when you have a revocable living trust, it's not just that you've got some magical document that just says, oh, everything avoids probate just because we've got this document. Well, no. It's all about having a trust, having assets titled in the name of the trust, having the beneficiary on death go to the trust or some other thing, to have a coordinated plan. You can't just sign the document and then change all of your assets up and not think about the trust anymore. This annual review meeting is specifically there to make sure we're reviewing these things. Now, this is something that's really important. And I just had a call yesterday or the other day, and I know it's going to end up being an issue. And I already had another client where this was an issue. I'm not going to talk to you about my finances. I don't care. Everything's all set. Well, we previously did a video a few weeks ago about a gentleman who just absolutely refused to talk about his finances with me, and at the same time refused to talk about his estate planning with his financial advisor. And then he passed on, and suddenly assets are going not where they're supposed to go, and certainly not how they're supposed to go. We set up all these trusts as a way to protect that beneficiary, but he went to the financial advisor and named that person directly. Okay, it bypassed the trust. It wasn't what he wanted. And it's this coordination with these new assets that makes sense. Same thing just the other day. Now, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Okay, we'll see in the future. So it's making sure that these changes in life and your assets and potentially in the law, that's where it's important to come in and making sure that we're staying on top of all of these things each year.
With the Estate Patch system, you can pick your own plan. This service of the Care Assistance Center LLC can provide U.S. adults with the estate documents they need without having to hire an attorney. If you want to handle these documents yourself, then our licensed document creation system can help you create your own documents, while our original courses and materials can help you maximize your plan and help maintain it. You can pick your own plan.
So what's the typical annual review meeting agenda? So it's not terribly complicated, but the thing I always start with is what questions do they have? So if there's some kind of changed circumstance, they're not sure about a certain thing. Well, I was thinking about potentially incorporating this charity. What's the best way to do that? We lead the whole meeting with those questions because that's what's most important to our clients. And I want to make sure that we're taking the time to address that. If there are any changes in the law from the last time we sat down and went through things, that's the next thing that we address. And I'll typically explain, here's what those changes were. Here's how they could potentially impact your plan. Like I said, those changes to law don't typically happen. And in recent years, it's, well, do you have more assets than 14 million in your estate? And people, a lot of my clients, they kind of laugh at that. And for married couples, that really can get doubled up to about 28 million. And a lot of my clients, no. In the cases where it is, it's like, well, okay, that was already a problem previously, and we've addressed it through other potential estate tax savings means. All right. So then the next thing, which really is the most critical, well, the most often occurring thing, is changes in investments and assets and making sure that everything is titled correctly. I gave the example of changing the banks and not setting up the new accounts in the name of the trust or making the trust the pay on death beneficiary. And all right, this is where we catch that in the annual review meeting. I purchased a piece of real estate, they purchased it in their name, or they moved, so they sold one house and purchased another, and that's titled in their name. This is where in the annual review that we're going to make sure we're covering that. And then uh, I also, after we discuss the assets, go in and see if there are any changes in their circumstances in life. So this is where we're going to talk about who they have listed to handle financial things for them if they can't. So that's really kind of getting to who's the trustee, who's the power of attorney, who's the executor. Second, who do you have making healthcare decisions for you if you're unable to and you're in a coma, you can't make these decisions, someone needs to. So we review that list to make sure there aren't any changes that need to be made. The third thing is if there are any changes to the beneficiaries, the percentages, how things go. Are there any changes to the age limits? And so we make sure we're covering that. And then not every year, but usually every other year, just because it's about a 15 to 20-minute overview with questions and whatnot on the need for long-term care. So I cover here's what traditional insurance is, and here's how that works. And for a lot of people, it's more expensive. Here are the other insurance options like annuities and life insurance that have living benefits that can end up taking care of long-term care needs, and other types of insurance that's supplemental other than the traditional one. And then I go into the legal one where we talk about the quote two trust solution, and here's how an irrevocable property trust and an irrevocable family trust can work in coordination, and here's how this plan works. And then, well, even if you don't do that, there are still potential things we can do. The reason I take the time to go through that is I have just had way too many clients have their kids come in. I hadn't seen the clients in 6 or 7 years, and the question is, well, we just looked into nursing homes for dad and it's really expensive. What should we do? I was like, well, how long have you known this is a problem? Well, 6 or 7 years. If they had come to me initially earlier, there's a lot more that we could have done. So this is why I'm putting that thought in my clients' minds to wait a minute. If something is popping up, it's even in the very formation stages. Let's make sure we're talking to Jeff so we can review everything that needs to happen about long-term care, and we're getting it early enough that we can save so much more for my clients and for their families. So again, about every other year I review that, and surprising, well, maybe not so surprisingly, a lot of my clients say, you know what, I'm starting to see some things going on with my parents. Maybe we should look into this more. Now, I'm just going to drop this here. We've got a webinar out there, payforlongtermcare.com. And then we also have our quote online pre-appointment packet course at freemedicaidcourse.com if you just want to check that out and get some additional information. All right. So when we're talking about an annual review, if you're my clients and you've got your trust, you've got your other documents, what do you want to do? How do you go about getting this done? First, you call the office and you set up your annual review meeting. You should have the number or at least the email, and someone on my staff will get that set up. You're going to have a confidential financial analysis form that's sent out. This is the listing of the assets, approximate values. We don't need to get overly precise with this. We just need to make sure that we've got a listing of where your assets are now, which would compare to back to when we last met or when we initially set up your trust, so that we can talk about that funding issue. And we've already kind of got everything laid out and you've gotten a little more organized. And this is an important one, be ready to discuss those big four questions. Well, and again, who do you trust with finances? Who do you trust to make healthcare decisions? Who gets what? When do they get it and how? And the fourth one, this is, all right, are there any additional children or any other potential people where you're the guardian over? So naming potential guardians. So review all of those things in your mind and start thinking about people and see if there are any potential changes. Now, I specifically, this has occurred on several occasions. I ask the questions, we run through those big four questions. It's been 10 years since they came in. And I said, well, who do you trust to handle financial things? They go, well, it's right there in the book. Well, no, the point is, let's make sure we're looking at who you trust today, and then we can compare it to those people. If you just stonewall and don't want to make a decision, you don't want to talk about it, well, then we're not going to get the people that you want. So those are the three big things. Again, call the office, fill out the confidential financial analysis form and send it in, and think a little bit about those big four questions. You don't need exact answers. That's part of the reason for the meeting, is we can kick around these ideas and talk pros and cons. All right, so I hope you found that information useful, especially if you're a client of ours. Let's make sure we're keeping those annual review meetings. And if you've got another attorney, this isn't a bad thing to update with them over time and keep your plan as fresh as possible. All right, so as I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.